In this video we are going to look over this Olympus XA camera, and we're going to put it through all its operations just to see how it works. So first of all, let's open up the battery compartment, and we can see here there are a little bit of abrasions and scrapes around there. I don't know exactly why, because if you just take a coin and carefully open the battery compartment, you can get that door open without having to mar it up. And then you can drop in 2 button cells. These cells are not included in the sale, but they're just here for my testing purposes. So now we can get that threaded back in properly and close it up. Okay, so now that we've got the batteries in, we can turn this to the battery check function. And we can see the little red light is on here, and we can hear an audible beep. So we know that's working. So we'll shut that off. At this point, I'm just going to point out this is the original XA. There were several in this series, but the XA is the original one, and this one has the official rangefinder-focus and the f2.8 35mm lens, which in later versions of this camera the rangefinder was lost and there were some different lenses used. The XA2 changed this to an f3.5, and so the rangefinder I've verified does work on here. I've looked through the viewfinder, and the aperture we can even see here as I'm working this here. We should be able to see the blades opening and closing down. So this one is a fully manual film advance with this thumb wheel and a very light touch switch here. So we're going to fire the shutter here, and we heard that go. We'll do that again. Okay. So we verified that the shutter is operational. So let's open it up and load in a roll of scrap film. Flip the little crank and pull up on it, and it opens here. I'll point out here that there's a little bit of sticky light seal residue here along the edges here, and we can see the foam here. It doesn't look to be in perfect condition, and I would say every one of these I've ever seen has had some amount of this going on. So these light seals are not ideal. At some point they should be replaced, ideally sooner than later. I don't think that they will directly affect its ability to take pictures because the door does close tightly, and I believe it's still sealed, but note that there's some gummy adhesive like feeling on here, and if those were all cleaned out and redone properly, that wouldn't be an issue. But so let's load. What I have here is a dummy roll of film. We're going to just run that across, and we're going to stick that into one of the slots here and start this winding in. This is not a really nice roll of film. This is actually one that's just had the cap pried off. So we're going to lock that down, and we'll stick this in one of these slots. Make sure it meshes with the sprocket hole here, and crank that in. And we're going to close the back, and now here it shows S. I'm going to fire that, and another one. Another one. Okay, now the counter is showing 1, so now we're set. And what I thought I'd do is I would stop this way down and point this into my light here, and we're going to listen to the shutter pretty quick. Now what I'm going to do is block off a bunch of the light facing into the shutter, and we'll listen. It should be a much slower shutter speed, and it was. With my hand out of the way, very quick. And with this open wide up, very quick. So we can see it's responding to light, and the metering seems to be working. So let's just take a look as we look around here. This one is in extremely nice condition. Often these have a lot of abrasion on the back because they were designed with this clamshell thing that closes off the lens, and they're often just very worn on this surface and especially on the back surface. And this one is really nice, as you can see, and it's got the original strap and it's held on the way it's supposed to be. So what I thought I'd do is now just fire off the rest of the film on this very short roll that I have, just to test. Okay, we're already to the end. So what we're going to do is press the rewind button on the bottom, and then we can open up the rewind crank and crank it all back into the housing. Okay, there I felt it break through, and it is now all in the housing. So if this were a real roll of film, we could send this in for processing. But as we've seen, everything seemed to work just fine with that. The one thing I did not test yet is the self-timer. So let's turn it on by opening it up. Set this to self-timer, and then we'll make sure it's cocked all the way. Here we hear the audible beep, and we can see this light blinking. And then we'll see when it fires. And there it is. So the self-timer seems to work just fine as well. So when I look at the lens, I do not see any problems with it. The aperture blades are working nicely. The focus is very smooth. I don't have the special flash that attaches to this one, but the contacts look good. The tripod socket looks like it was possibly never even used. I don't see any wear on it at all. So all in all, a very nice example of the original Olympus XA 35mm camera. I would say it does need light seals, and that should be done at some point. It's routine maintenance for a camera as old as this. I believe this came out around 1980. I remember when they were new. And so foam breaks down in that amount of time, but it's really not a big problem. And if you're a camera aficionado, you can probably replace that yourself. But be aware, it should have light seals replaced, but otherwise everything about it looks good to me.